Welcome to the Kick the Habit Forever podcast. My name is Michael Quirk. I'm a licensed therapist, coach, and educator. I've spent the last 25 years working with high-performing men, helping them to break free of the addictions, compulsion, bad habits, painful symptoms, and skills deficits that hold them back. If you're a high-performing man and your goal is to get control over your porn use, then this podcast is for you. What are the first steps that you should take if you want to stop pornography addiction? This week, a gentleman who I'm going to refer to as Donald met with me. He told me that he thought that viewing adult content had crossed a very personal line for him, and he wants to make some changes in his life. So he asked me how he should start and where he should start. And that's what prompted this video and this podcast episode. For many of the men that I work with, pornography addiction is a pervasive issue, and it's one that negatively impacts their mental health, their relationships, and their overall sense of well-being. Recognizing the problem and taking your first steps towards recovery is essential if you intend on breaking free permanently from this cycle of compulsion. Today, I want to talk with you and explore the critical initial steps that you should take in order to stop a porn addiction in its tracks. I'll be focusing today on self-awareness, on seeking support, on creating a structured plan for yourself, and on cultivating healthier habits that are going to serve your well-being over the long haul. Step one is simply acknowledging the problem in its entirety. It's the first and perhaps most important step in overcoming any addiction, any compulsion, or any bad habit that you're stuck in, any deeply ingrained habit. It requires you to recognize and, first of all, admit that it's actually an issue. This includes compulsive porn use. Many people remain in denial about the porn habit. They minimize the extent of their consumption, and they also minimize its impact on their lives. In fact, there are quite a few clients that I've worked with in my practice for whom it took years and years for them to identify and address the issue head on. Self-awareness is key to initiating any kind of change. It involves reflecting on the effects thoroughly. So I want you to consider how pornography consumption has affected your personal relationships, what it's done to your self-esteem, how it's limited your productivity, how it's affected your mental health. For instance, you might realize that your excessive use of porn has led to feelings of guilt or shame, or perhaps even anxiety about getting busted by your partner or outed at work. You might find, when you think about it, that it's strained intimacy with your partner, or that it's interfering with your performance at work or at school. And I want to share with you a story to give you a sense of this. Take Sam. He's a college student that I work with, and he realized a while back that his addiction to pornography was making it quite difficult for him to maintain his relationships. And I'm talking about relationships of all kinds, from his relationship with his partner to his relationship with his good friends. After a friend confronted him about his growing emotional distance, Sam reflected with me on how his consumption had become a coping mechanism for his sometimes crippling social anxiety and his brutal self-consciousness. But he could see that the porn use itself was causing harm to him. This moment of clarity motivated him to seek change, and that's why he sought out my help. It's important that you have a way to recognize the patterns of your use. Here I'm talking about identifying triggers, such as whatever they are for you: stress, boredom, fear, loneliness, depression, the states that lead to pornography use for you. So, for example, in our session, Sam identified that he noticed that he turned to pornography typically during his late night hours when he was up late studying. And it was at those times that he felt particularly isolated, and at those times that he felt the worst about himself. Here's another example for you. Ron is a busy marketing executive that I've worked with. He discovered that his trigger was physical and mental exhaustion that grew out of very long work days. He used pornography as a way to unwind, but he began to notice how it was replacing more fulfilling evening activities like connecting with friends or reading. He even stopped his lifelong love of martial arts practice. He began to skip the dojo. He stayed home and he just watched porn night after night. Recognizing this pattern was the first step in shifting his habit. Accepting responsibility is a key part of recovering from any addiction, compulsion, or bad habit. Acknowledging the problem without self-judgment creates a foundation for growth. Shifting from blaming circumstances to becoming accountable empowers you to take action. So, for example, instead of saying, I can't help it, it was a nightmare of a day at work today. My professor is an idiot. I can't deal with it. You might step out of that narrative and start to question it. You might, for example, think, well, things are tough right now. I can work towards change. I can change how I relate to other people and myself. Another important step is educating yourself about addiction in general. Understanding the nature of pornography addiction can demystify the process of recovery and help to reduce your feelings of shame. It can help you to understand that addictions, compulsions, and bad habits are very human challenges. Addiction to porn involves the brain's reward system. That's a system that releases dopamine, a neurochemical that's involved in seeking and pleasure and satisfaction. And it gets released during consumption of pornography. Over time, this creates a kind of hook. It creates a physiological dependency that reinforces your habit. By educating yourself about the science of addiction and learning how your brain is affected by repeated exposure to explicit material, it can clarify why quitting might indeed be challenging, but achievable for you. For example, Don, the client I mentioned earlier, told me that he watched a very interesting video explaining the neural pathways and how they functioned and how they were involved in keeping addictions alive. It provided him with insight into why his cravings occurred and why sometimes they were so strong. Another example for you is Mark. He's a professor that I work with, and he has found it enlightening to read about how the brain rewires itself and what's required to do so, and to learn about how repeated exposure to pornography affects him. Understanding the biology behind his cravings makes him feel much less ashamed. It makes him just feel like a normal human who's kind of hooked on something. And he tells me that this learning has led him to feel more empowered to tackle the issue. But remember, taking the habit isn't just about collecting data. It's not just about educating your intellect. It's about taking action. I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with who intellectually know quite a bit about the very conditions which ensnare them. It's important to understand the social impact of your porn use. Understanding how pornography perpetuates unhealthy views of your relationships, how it distorts your expectations of intimacy, can further motivate you for change. I'm suggesting here that you take a full and complete account, fully realizing how pornography creates unrealistic expectations about physical appearances, your body, and your sexual performance. These influence your real world relationships. In our day and age, we have lots of available resources for you. You can familiarize yourself. You can look through books. You can read articles, blog posts. I encourage you to seek reputable websites that offer wise guidance and strategies for overcoming addiction and compulsion. The next action item when it comes to kicking your porn habit is establishing crystal clear goals. Setting clear, measurable goals is going to help you create a sense of direction. It's going to breed clarity and it's going to foster accountability. These goals should be specific. So I want you to define what success looks like for you. That way you know when you've hit the mark and when you're missing it, slightly or by a lot. For example, you might aim to reduce consumption from daily to once a week as an initial step, and then perhaps progress towards complete abstinence. Here's an example. Antonio, again, someone that I work with, set a very specific goal. He wanted to go 30 days without watching pornography of any kind. He decided that he wanted to track his progress on a calendar, and he made a point of celebrating every small victory along the way, such as, for example, when he made it through his most challenging days, those days when the cravings and the urges were strong. And he celebrated every day he got through without relapsing. You also want your goals to be achievable. So I want you to break your larger goals into smaller, more manageable milestones. You might start by avoiding pornography during specific hours of the day, or by eliminating access to porn on certain devices that you have. You also want time-bound goals. Assign a timeline to your goals to maintain your focus and to hold yourself accountable. As I mentioned, you might commit to a 14-day or a 30-day challenge to stay free from pornography. So, for example, recently there were a number of people I knew that were taking part in that mental toughness challenge that was very popular on the internet a couple of months back. This is going to enable you to reflect on your progress and also help you to troubleshoot and tweak your plan. If you write these goals down, you're going to tend to find that it increases your commitment. Keeping a journal to track progress and to track your setbacks is a very useful tool for many people. For instance, you can document your thoughts and your feelings after each successful day. Doing this can reinforce positive behavior. In psychology, one of the things that we know is that when it comes to habit change, the people who keep records are on average twice as successful as those who don't. Over the last quarter century, I've seen this time and time again in my work. The next step in kicking your porn habit is seeking support. Pornography addiction is usually very isolating, as is any compulsion or addiction, but recovery requires connection and accountability. It involves including people more in your life. It involves building a support system. That's crucial. And some options for you include your friends and family. Share your struggles with trusted loved ones. This can provide you with emotional support and with encouragement. Confiding in a close friend about your goals to quit can create an additional layer of accountability. Accountability buddies are becoming a much more popular concept. I hear about them all the time for people. whether it's, they're talking about their workout buddies. I have clients I work with who have meditation accountability buddies, diet accountability buddies, and definitely porn habit accountability buddies. Remember, it's wise to turn towards people who are not going to judge you and shame you, but people who are also aren't going to rubber stamp your habit. I want to share with you another quick story. Javier is somebody I remember. He's a man that I worked with probably about a decade ago at this point. And I remember how he opened up to his older brother about his addiction. This act was life-changing for him. His brother became his accountability partner, and they checked in weekly, sometimes multiple times a week. And his brother encouraged him, especially when he felt like giving up and giving in. There's also professional help. Consulting an expert, especially somebody who specializes in addiction or sexual health, will offer you personalized strategies, will help you grow your insights, make behavioral changes, and help you to dismantle this pattern. Support groups and communities are very powerful aids in the recovery journey. Joining a group or an online forum focused on recovery can help you build a sense of community. It can help shatter isolation and cultivate shared purpose. Hearing how others navigate similar challenges can provide you with inspiration and practical advice. Remember, often we hear ourselves in other people, and just hearing other people's stories and experiences shows us things in ourselves. One big part of recovery is identifying and addressing triggers. This is crucial. Triggers are the situations, the emotions, the thoughts, or the images that go through our mind that lead to pornography use. Common triggers that I hear about every day include high levels of stress, boredom, loneliness, fear, shame, and even specific locations, situations, or devices. To address these, one thing you can do is keep a trigger journal. You can document moments of temptation to identify your patterns. For example, you might notice that scrolling social media late at night leads to cravings. That's something specific that you can do something about. You may decide that it's time to modify your environment. Implement physical changes such as using internet filters. Many people do. They're getting more and more common. You might decide to keep devices out of your bedroom. For instance, some of my clients use apps that block explicit content and provide accountability. For example, one person even has an app that sends reports to a trusted accountability buddy. So somebody mentioned to me this week, I'll refer to him as Chris. Chris told me that he deleted just one of his social media apps after he noticed and became clear that this one particular app regularly served up softcore porn to him. He found that this app led to repeated pornography consumption. It was what he described as a kind of gateway for him. He also decided that he wanted to install accountability software on his device. And so far, it's made a huge difference for him. Another key step, you want to be sure that you replace pornography with healthy alternatives. Stopping an addictive behavior often creates a void in your life that needs to be filled with healthier habits. Identifying and engaging in positive alternatives can redirect your energy and your attention. So consider hobbies, pursue activities that you find fulfilling, things like art, music, working out. Here's a story for you. After quitting pornography, Adam, my client, rediscovered his love for painting. It was something that he'd put on the back shelf in his life for well over a decade. And he found that channeling his energy into this creative expression not only filled his time, but improved his mood and self-esteem. It also gave him a way to connect with more people in his life as he shared his artwork, both on social media and in person. Physical activity is important. Regular exercise boosts our mood, it reduces our stress, and it provides us with a natural high. Many people also get great benefit from things like mindfulness practices, techniques like yoga, meditation, journaling, therapy. These are all practices that can help you manage cravings and at the same time, increase your self-awareness. All right. So wrapping up here, breaking free from the pornography addiction or compulsion or bad habit is something that's challenging for many people, but it is achievable. I've seen many people kick the habit forever with the right kind of approach. By acknowledging your problem, by seeking support, by addressing your triggers, by cultivating healthier habits for yourself, you can take significant, meaningful steps towards recovery. Your journey requires commitment. It's going to require that you build your resilience. It's going to ask you to be more self-compassionate with yourself. But the rewards that you're going to find are rich. I'm talking about improved mental health, stronger relationships, a greater sense of pride over your self-control. These are the things that make kicking any habit worthwhile. Each and every step, no matter how small it is one that brings you closer to a life that's free from the grip of addiction. I want to thank you for your attention and wish you the best of luck. Thanks for listening today. I'd like to invite you to view my free class. It's called How to Kick the Habit Forever. In it, we talk about what you have to do in order to unhook yourself from compulsively using adult content. Go to www.kickthehabitforever.com now to view it.